The ruins of the old cathedral were a stark contrast to the surrounding forest. The crumbling stone walls and shattered stained glass windows stood as a testament to a long-forgotten past. As I approached, I could feel the weight of history and the malevolent energy that seemed to seep from the very stones. Lydia was waiting for me at the entrance, her expression serious. "Grayson, this is worse than we feared. The ancient evil we're dealing with is a powerful lich, a necromancer who has achieved immortality by binding his soul to a phylactery. We need to find and destroy the phylactery to defeat him." I nodded, gripping my rifle tightly. "Where is it?" Lydia gestured towards the darkened interior of the cathedral. "Inside. But be careful. The Lich has raised an army of undead to protect it. We'll need to work together to get through." We stepped inside, the air growing colder as we ventured deeper into the ruins. The chanting of the Lich echoed through the halls, a low, ominous sound that sent shivers down my spine. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord, and the sense of malevolent presence grew stronger with each step. As we entered the main hall, we were met with a horrifying sight. Rows of undead soldiers stood at attention, their eyes glowing with an unholy light. At the far end of the hall, atop a dais, stood the Lich. He was a tall, skeletal figure, draped in tattered robes, his eyes burning with dark fire. In his bony hands, he held a staff that crackled with dark energy. "Welcome, Jackson Grayson," the Lich intoned, his voice a chilling echo. "You are too late. My power is absolute." "We'll see about that," I replied, raising my rifle. "Lydia, cover me." Lydia began chanting, her hands glowing with magical energy. The undead soldiers lunged at us, their weapons raised. I fired shot after shot, each bullet striking its mark, but the sheer number of undead was overwhelming. "Grayson, I need more time," Lydia shouted, her voice strained. I reached into my pocket and pulled out another enchanted runestone, chanting the incantation and hurling it at the Lich. The runestone exploded in a burst of light, causing the Lich to recoil, his dark energy flickering. Taking advantage of the distraction, I charged towards the dais, my silver dagger in hand. The Lich raised his staff, sending bolts of dark energy towards me, but I dodged and weaved, closing the distance. With a shout, I plunged the dagger into the Lich's chest. He screamed, his skeletal body convulsing as the dark energy was expelled. But I knew this wouldn't be enough. The phylactery had to be destroyed. "Lydia, where's the phylactery?" I shouted, pulling the dagger free. Lydia's eyes scanned the room, finally landing on a small, ornate box hidden behind the Lich's throne. "There! Destroy it!" I sprinted towards the box, dodging the undead soldiers that still swarmed the hall. Reaching the phylactery, I smashed it with the hilt of my dagger, the box shattering and releasing a blinding light. The Lich let out a final, agonized scream, his body disintegrating into ash. The undead soldiers collapsed, their eyes dimming as the dark energy was expelled from them. The cathedral fell silent, the oppressive weight of dark magic lifting. I stood over the remains of the Lich, my breath coming in ragged gasps. "We did it," Lydia said, her voice filled with relief. I nodded, exhaustion washing over me. Another one down, but I know there will always be more. As we made our way out of the cathedral, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon, I couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. Another dark force was defeated, and another town was saved. But I knew there would always be more challenges ahead. When I returned to my truck, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Lydia. "Grayson, well done. The Lich has been defeated, and the threat neutralized. But we have received word of another potential danger. A powerful entity is stirring in the old mansion on the edge of town. We need your help." I couldn't help but chuckle as I read the message. The hunt never truly ended, and there was always another monster to face. As I drove towards the old mansion, the sun rising higher in the sky, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. This was what I lived for, what I was born to do. Because I was Jackson Grayson, the best damn monster hunter this side of the Rockies. And I wasn't going to let anything stand in my way. The old mansion loomed ahead, its dark, brooding silhouette stark against the brightening sky. It was a place that had long been shrouded in mystery and fear, with countless stories of hauntings and malevolent spirits. As I approached, the air grew colder, and an unnatural silence settled over the area. I parked my truck at the edge of the mansion's grounds and grabbed my gear. The message from Lydia had been vague about the nature of the entity, but I was prepared for anything. Silver bullets, holy water, enchanted talismans, and my trusty silver dagger were all within easy reach. The front door of the mansion creaked ominously as I pushed it open. The interior was dark and musty, the air thick with the scent of decay. My flashlight beam cut through the gloom, revealing a grand but dilapidated foyer. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the furniture was covered in a thick layer of dust. "Lydia," I whispered into my radio, "I'm inside the mansion. Do you have any idea where this entity might be hiding?" There was a brief crackle of static before Lydia's voice came through. "We believe it's in the basement. Be careful, Grayson. The readings we've gotten suggest this entity is incredibly powerful." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Roger that. Heading to the basement now." I moved cautiously through the mansion, every creak of the floorboards and rustle of the wind setting my nerves on edge. The place was a labyrinth of dark hallways and shadowy rooms, but I finally found a door that led down to the basement. It was locked, but a few well-placed blows with the butt of my rifle broke it open. The basement was even darker and more foreboding than the rest of the mansion. The walls were lined with shelves full of old, decaying books and strange artifacts. At the far end of the room, I could see a faint, eerie glow emanating from a large, ornate mirror. As I approached the mirror, I felt a chill run down my spine. The surface of the glass rippled like water, and I could see a shadowy figure moving within. The air around me grew colder, and I knew I was in the presence of something truly malevolent. "Grayson," Lydia's voice crackled through the radio, "the entity is bound to that mirror. You need to find a way to disrupt its connection." I scanned the room, my eyes landing on a series of runes etched into the floor around the mirror. "Lydia, there are runes here. Could they be part of the binding?" "Yes," Lydia replied, her voice urgent. "Destroy the runes, and it should weaken the entity's hold." I moved quickly, smashing the runes with the hilt of my dagger. As each rune shattered, the glow from the mirror grew fainter, and the shadowy figure inside writhed in apparent agony. With the last rune destroyed, the mirror's surface turned dark, and the basement was plunged into an eerie silence. I approached the mirror cautiously, my dagger at the ready. Suddenly, the shadowy figure burst forth from the glass, its form twisting and shifting as it solidified into a tall, menacing specter. "You dare challenge me, mortal?" the entity hissed, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. "You will suffer for your insolence." I raised my rifle, firing a shot that passed straight through the specter, the bullet embedding itself in the wall behind it. "Looks like I'm gonna need something a bit more substantial," I muttered, reaching for a vial of holy water. The specter lunged at me, its claws outstretched. I hurled the vial, the holy water splashing across its form and causing it to recoil with a shriek of pain. I followed up with a second vial, the liquid burning the specter's ethereal flesh. "You will pay for this," it screamed, its voice echoing through the basement. I didn't waste any time. Reaching for an enchanted talisman, I chanted the incantation Lydia had taught me and hurled it at the specter. The talisman exploded in a burst of light, and the specter writhed in agony, its form flickering. With a final, desperate scream, the specter dissipated into a cloud of smoke, leaving the basement in complete silence. The mirror's surface turned dull and lifeless, the malevolent energy gone. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "Lydia, the entity is gone. The mirror is neutralized." "Well done, Grayson," Lydia replied, relief evident in her voice. "You've done it again. Head back to town. There's something important we need to discuss." As I made my way back through the mansion, I couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming. The battles were getting more frequent and more intense, suggesting that the darkness was growing stronger. When I returned to my truck, I sat behind the wheel for a moment, letting the adrenaline ebb away. Lydia had sounded serious, and that worried me. As I drove back to town, the sun rising higher in the sky, I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. Back in town, Lydia was waiting for me at the local diner, a stack of files spread out on the table in front of her. She looked up as I entered, her expression grave. "Grayson, take a seat. We need to talk." I slid into the booth across from her, noting the tension in her posture. "What's going on, Lydia?" She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting mine. We've been monitoring the situation closely, and it appears that all these recent incidents, the Lich, the Demon Lord, the Warlock, and now the Spectre, are connected. We believe there is a larger force at work, something orchestrating these events from the shadows. I frowned, the implications sinking in. You think someone, or something, is coordinating these attacks? Lydia nodded. Yes, and we've identified a possible suspect, an ancient, powerful being known as the Shadow King. He's been dormant for centuries, but we believe he is awakening, and he's the one behind all these recent disturbances. What's the plan? I asked, my mind already racing with possibilities. We need to find him and stop him before he can regain his full strength, Lydia said, her voice steady. It won't be easy, but I believe we can do it with your skills and our resources. I nodded, determination settling over me. Where do we start? Lydia handed me a file, the top page showing a map with several locations marked. We've identified a series of ancient sites where he might be hiding. Each one holds a piece of the puzzle. We need to investigate them and find clues to his whereabouts. I took the file, and my resolve is firm. Let's get to work. The Shadow King doesn't stand a chance. As we left the diner and headed toward the first location on the map, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. This was the biggest hunt yet, culminating everything I had faced. The Shadow King was a formidable opponent, but I was ready. Because I was Jackson Grayson, the best damn monster hunter this side of the Rockies. And I wasn't going to let anything stand in my way. Our first destination was an ancient, long-abandoned temple deep within the forest. The map Lydia had given me indicated it was one of the key sites where we might find clues about the Shadow King's whereabouts. As we drove, the trees grew denser, their branches forming a dark canopy overhead that blocked out much of the sunlight. Lydia and I spoke little during the drive, both of us lost in our thoughts. The stakes had never been higher, and the weight of our mission pressed heavily on us. When we finally reached the edge of the forest, we parked the truck and gathered our gear. The path ahead was rough and overgrown, but we pressed on, determined to find the answers we needed. The temple was a towering structure of weathered stone, partially reclaimed by nature. Vines and moss clung to the walls, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. As we approached, I could feel the oppressive weight of ancient magic hanging over the place. Lydia, are you sure this is the right place? I asked, my voice low. She nodded, her eyes scanning the temple's facade. Yes, the energy here is unmistakable. Be on your guard, Grayson. We don't know what we might find inside. We entered the temple cautiously, our flashlights illuminating the dark interior. The walls were covered in intricate carvings and faded murals depicting scenes of power and sacrifice. The air was cool and damp, and our footsteps echoed eerily through the empty halls. As we ventured deeper into the temple, we came across a large chamber with a stone altar at its center. The altar was covered in strange symbols and runes, and a faint, eerie glow emanated from it. Lydia approached the altar, her fingers tracing the carvings. These runes are ancient, she said, her voice filled with awe. They're part of a binding spell. The Shadow King's power was sealed here centuries ago. Can you decipher them? I asked, keeping my eyes on the shadows that seemed to dance at the edges of the room. Lydia nodded, her eyes focused on the runes. I need a few minutes. Keep an eye out for any trouble. I moved to the entrance of the chamber, my rifle at the ready. The air felt charged with anticipation, as if the temple itself was aware of our presence. As Lydia worked, I scanned the room, my senses on high alert. Suddenly, a low, rumbling growl echoed through the chamber. I spun around, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, revealing a pair of glowing red eyes watching us from the shadows. Lydia, we've got company, I said, my voice tense. She glanced up, her expression grim. Keep them off me, Grayson. I'm almost done. The creature stepped into the light, revealing itself to be a massive, shadowy beast with long, razor-sharp claws and teeth. It lunged at me, its movement swift and deadly. I fired a shot, the bullet striking the creature's shoulder, but it barely slowed it down. I dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding its claws, and fired again, aiming for its head. The creature let out a roar of pain, but continued its relentless attack. I could see more shadows moving in the darkness, and I knew we were in for a fight. Lydia, Hurry up, I shouted, firing another shot at the approaching creatures. I'm almost there, she replied, her voice strained. Just a little longer. The shadowy beasts closed in, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. I fired shot after shot, each bullet finding its mark, but the creatures kept coming. I could feel the adrenaline surging through me, my focus razor-sharp as I fought to keep them at bay. Finally, Lydia let out a triumphant cry. Got it! The spell is deciphered. She raised her hands, chanting an incantation that caused the runes on the altar to glow brighter. The creatures shrieked in agony, their forms dissolving into smoke as the spell took hold. The chamber was filled with a blinding light, and I shielded my eyes, feeling the dark energy dissipate. When the light faded, the chamber was silent, the shadowy beasts gone. Lydia approached me, a satisfied smile on her face. We did it, Grayson. The binding spell is reinforced. The Shadow King's power here is neutralized. I nodded, catching my breath. Good work, Lydia. What's next? She handed me a small, ancient scroll she had retrieved from the altar. This scroll contains the next clue. It points to another site, a hidden cave in the mountains. We need to go there and continue our search. As we made our way back to the truck, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The battle was far from over, but we had made significant progress. Each step brought us closer to the Shadow King, and I was determined to see this through to the end. We drove towards the mountains, the sun beginning to set behind us. The landscape grew more rugged and unforgiving, but I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was what I lived for, what I was born to do. Because I was Jackson Grayson, the best damn monster hunter this side of the Rockies. And I wasn't going to let anything stand in my way. The hidden cave was nestled high in the mountains, accessible only by a narrow, treacherous path. As we climbed, the air grew colder, and the wind whipped around us, carrying the scent of pine and snow. The sky was darkening, the stars beginning to twinkle overhead. When we finally reached the cave, I could feel the same oppressive energy that had surrounded the temple. The entrance was partially obscured by rocks and overgrown vegetation, but it was unmistakably the place we were looking for. Lydia, are you ready? I asked, glancing at her. She nodded, her eyes determined. Let's do this. We entered the cave, our flashlights casting long shadows on the rough walls. The air inside was damp and cold, the sound of dripping water echoing through the narrow passages. As we ventured deeper, we came across another chamber, this one filled with ancient statues and carvings. At the center of the chamber was a pedestal with a large, glowing crystal. The light from the crystal cast an eerie glow over the room, and I could feel the powerful energy emanating from it. This is it, Lydia said, approaching the crystal. This is where the Shadow King's power is concentrated. We need to disrupt the energy flow and weaken him further. I nodded, keeping my rifle ready. How do we do that? Lydia examined the crystal, her fingers tracing the symbols etched into it. There are runes here, similar to the ones at the temple. We need to destroy them to break the flow of energy. As Lydia began to chant, I kept watch, my eyes scanning the shadows for any signs of movement. The cave was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the sound of Lydia's incantation and the faint hum of the crystal. Suddenly, the ground beneath us began to tremble, and a low, menacing growl echoed through the chamber. I turned, my flashlight revealing a massive, shadowy figure emerging from the darkness. Lydia, we've got trouble, I said, my voice tense. She continued chanting, her voice unwavering. Keep it off me, Grayson. I'm almost done. The shadowy figure lunged at me, its claws slashing through the air. I fired a shot, the bullet striking its shoulder, but the creature barely flinched. I dodged to the side, firing again and again, but the creature's dark energy seemed to absorb the bullets. Lydia, hurry up, I shouted, narrowly avoiding the creature's claws. I'm almost there. She replied, her voice strained. Just a little longer. The creature roared, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. I could see more shadows moving in the darkness, and I knew we were in for another fight. I reached for an enchanted talisman, chanting the incantation and hurling it at the creature. The talisman exploded in a burst of light, causing the creature to recoil in pain. I took advantage of the momentary distraction, firing another shot that struck it in the head. The creature let out a final, agonized roar before collapsing to the ground, dissolving into smoke. "Lydia, now!" I shouted, turning to face the other approaching shadows. With a final, triumphant cry, Lydia completed the incantation, and the runes on the crystal shattered. The light from the crystal flickered and died, and the dark energy dissipated. The remaining shadows melted away, leaving the chamber in silence. "We did it, Grayson," Lydia said, her voice filled with relief. "The Shadow King's power is weakened. We've bought ourselves some time." I nodded, catching my breath. "What's next?" She handed me another scroll she had retrieved from the crystal's pedestal. This scroll contains the final clue. It points to the Shadow King's lair, deep in the heart of the forest. We need to go there and finish this once and for all. As we made our way back to the truck, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The final battle was approaching, and I was determined to see it through to the end. We drove towards the heart of the forest, the moon rising high in the sky. The trees grew denser, their branches forming a dark canopy overhead. The air was thick with the scent of pine and moss, and I could feel the weight of the task ahead. This was it, the final battle, the culmination of everything we had faced so far. The Shadow King was a formidable opponent, but I was ready. This was what I lived for, what I was born to do, because I was Jackson Grayson, the best damn monster hunter this side of the Rockies, and I wasn't going to let anything stand in my way. The hidden cave was nestled high in the mountains, accessible only by a narrow, treacherous path. The air grew colder as we climbed, and the wind whipped around us, carrying the scent of pine and snow. The sky was darkening, the stars beginning to twinkle overhead. When we finally reached the cave, I could feel the same oppressive energy surrounding the temple. Rocks and overgrown vegetation partially obscured the entrance, but it was unmistakably the place we sought. "Lydia, are you ready?" I asked, glancing at her. She nodded, her eyes determined. "Let's do this." We entered the cave, our flashlights casting long shadows on the rough walls. The air inside was damp and cold, and dripping water echoed through the narrow passages. As we ventured deeper, we came across another chamber filled with ancient statues and carvings. A pedestal with a large, glowing crystal was at the center of the chamber. The crystal's light cast an eerie glow over the room, and I could feel the powerful energy emanating from it. "This is it," Lydia said, approaching the crystal. "This is where the Shadow King's power is concentrated. We need to disrupt the energy flow and weaken him further." I nodded, keeping my rifle ready. "How do we do that?" Lydia examined the crystal, her fingers tracing the symbols etched into it. "There are runes here, similar to the ones at the temple. We need to destroy them to break the flow of energy." As Lydia began to chant, I kept watch, my eyes scanning the shadows for any signs of movement. The cave was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the sound of Lydia's enchantment and the faint hum of the crystal. Suddenly, the ground beneath us began to tremble, and a low, menacing growl echoed through the chamber. I turned, my flashlight revealing a massive, shadowy figure emerging from the darkness. "Lydia, we've got trouble," I said, my voice tense. She continued chanting, her voice unwavering. "Keep it off me, Grayson. I'm almost done." The shadowy figure lunged at me, its claws slashing through the air. I fired a shot, the bullet striking its shoulder, but the creature barely flinched. I dodged to the side, firing repeatedly, but the creature's dark energy seemed to absorb the bullets. "Lydia, hurry up," I shouted, narrowly avoiding the creature's claws. "I'm almost there," she replied, her voice strained. "Just a little longer." The creature roared, its eyes glowing with an evil light. I saw more shadows moving in the darkness, and I knew we were in for another fight. I reached for an enchanted talisman, chanting the incantation and hurling it at the creature. The talisman exploded in a burst of light, causing the creature to recoil in pain. I took advantage of the momentary distraction, firing another shot that struck it in the head. The creature let out a final, agonized roar before collapsing to the ground, dissolving into smoke. "Lydia, now!" I shouted, turning to face the other approaching shadows. With a final, triumphant cry, Lydia completed the incantation, and the runes on the crystal shattered. The light from the crystal flickered and died, and the dark energy dissipated. The remaining shadows melted away, leaving the chamber in silence. "We did it, Grayson," Lydia said, her voice filled with relief. "The Shadow King's power is weakened. We've bought ourselves some time." I nodded, catching my breath. What's next? She handed me another scroll she had retrieved from the crystal's pedestal. This scroll contains the final clue. It points to the Shadow King's lair, deep in the heart of the forest. We need to go there and finish this once and for all. As we made our way back to the truck, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The final battle was approaching, and I was determined to see it through. We drove towards the forest's heart, the moon rising in the sky. The trees grew denser, their branches forming a dark canopy overhead. The air was thick with the scent of pine and moss, and I could feel the task's weight ahead. This was it, the final battle, the culmination of everything we had faced so far. The Shadow King was a formidable opponent, but I was ready. This was what I lived for, what I was born to do. Because I was Jackson Grayson, the best damn monster hunter this side of the Rockies, and I wasn't going to let anything stand in my way. The forest's heart was an ancient, untamed place filled with towering trees and dense undergrowth. The shadows seemed deeper here, the air heavier with the scent of earth and decay. As we made our way through the woods, the sense of foreboding grew stronger with each step. Lydia and I moved cautiously, our flashlights piercing the darkness. The coordinates on the scroll led us to a large clearing dominated by a massive, gnarled tree. The tree's twisted branches reached toward the sky like skeletal fingers, and the ground around it was barren as if nothing dared to grow near it. "This is it," Lydia said, her voice barely a whisper. "It's the Shadow King's lair." I nodded, gripping my rifle tightly. "Stay close and keep your guard up." We approached the tree, its oppressive energy growing stronger. As we reached its base, we found a hidden entrance leading down into the earth. The tunnel was narrow and dark, the air thick with the scent of mold and damp stone. We descended into the tunnel, our footsteps echoing off the rough walls. The darkness seemed to press in on us, and the sense of evil presence grew stronger with each step. At the end of the tunnel, we emerged into a vast underground chamber, illuminated by a faint, eerie glow. The chamber was filled with ancient runes and symbols carved into the walls and floor. At the center of the room stood a large, ornate pedestal, atop which was a black, pulsating crystal. The crystal radiated dark energy, and I could feel the power of the Shadow King emanating from it. "Grayson," Lydia said, her voice filled with awe, "this is the source of the Shadow King's power. We need to destroy it." I nodded, my eyes scanning the chamber. "Let's do it." As we approached the pedestal, the ground beneath us began to tremble, and a deep, rumbling voice filled the chamber. "Fools, you dare to challenge me?" The air grew colder, and a massive, shadowy figure materialized before us. The Shadow King was a towering, menacing presence, his eyes glowing with an intense, otherworldly fire. He raised his arms, dark energy swirling around him. "You have interfered with my plans for the last time," he growled. "Now you will face my wrath." The Shadow King hurled a bolt of dark energy at us, and I barely had time to react. I pushed Lydia out of the way, the energy striking the ground where she had been standing. I fired a shot at the Shadow King, but the bullet passed through him, striking the wall behind me. "Your mortal weapons are useless against me," the Shadow King sneered. "You cannot hope to defeat me." I reached for an enchanted talisman, chanting the incantation and hurling it at the Shadow King. The talisman exploded in a burst of light, causing him to recoil with a roar of pain. I took advantage of the momentary distraction, firing another shot. "Lydia, destroy the crystal!" I shouted, keeping my eyes on the Shadow King. Lydia moved towards the pedestal, her hands glowing with magical energy. She began to chant, her voice rising above the battle's din. The runes on the pedestal flickered, and the dark energy around the crystal began to waver. The Shadow King roared in fury, turning his gaze on Lydia. "No, you will not succeed." He lunged at her, his claws outstretched. I fired another shot, striking him in the shoulder, but it barely slowed him down. I charged forward, swinging my silver dagger and driving it into his side. The Shadow King screamed in agony, his body convulsing as the dark energy was expelled. Lydia continued to chant, the light from her hands growing brighter. The crystal began to crack, and the dark energy within it surged. With a final, desperate roar, the Shadow King raised his arms, sending a wave of dark energy crashing towards us. I threw myself in front of Lydia, the energy striking me and sending me flying backwards. Pain shot through my body, but I forced myself to stand. "Lydia, now!" I shouted, my voice strained. Lydia completed the incantation with a final, triumphant cry, and the crystal shattered. The chamber was filled with a blinding light, and the Shadow King released a final, agonized scream. His form flickered and wavered, the dark energy dissipating. The light faded, and the chamber fell silent. The Shadow King was gone, his power broken. I stumbled to my feet, catching my breath. Lydia approached me, a look of relief on her face. "We did it, Grayson," she said, her voice filled with awe. "The Shadow King is defeated." I nodded, exhaustion washing over me. "It's over. We won." As we made our way back through the tunnel, I couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. We had faced incredible odds and emerged victorious. The darkness had been driven back, and the world was safer again. When we reached the surface, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon, casting a warm glow over the forest. I took a deep breath, savoring the fresh air. Another dark force was defeated, and another town was saved. Back at the truck, Lydia turned to me, her expression serious. "Grayson, you've done more than anyone could have asked. The world is a safer place because of you." I smiled, feeling a sense of pride. "Just doing my job, Lydia, but this won't be the last time we face something like this." She nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "You're probably right, but when the time comes, we'll be ready." As I drove back to town, the sun rising higher in the sky, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. There would always be monsters to hunt, always darkness to fight, but I was ready for whatever came next. Because I was Jackson Grayson, the best damn monster hunter this side of the Rockies, and I wasn't going to let anything stand in my way. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more tales. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest videos. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below and share your scary encounters. And consider joining the Fear Frequencies community for exclusive perks and early access to new content. Your support helps us create even more thrilling stories. And if you really enjoyed it, please consider leaving a super thanks.